Now, it is my great honor and privilege. I got to sit next to Sam Palmisano at dinner tonight. It was my request. Since it's my thing, I got it. Because I never get to sit next to a big deal CEO. You know, we have senators, we have ambassadors, we have cabinet secretaries, which are all fabulous, but we don't have CEOs like Sam Palmisano in Washington. So I get to introduce him tonight. So here you go. I am thrilled that Sam Palmisano, Chairman, President, and CEO of IBM, is able to be part of our program tonight. He took over the reins as CEO in 2002 and quickly began one of the company's most ambitious transformations, repositioning IBM for leadership in a globally integrated economy. Sam was one of the first CEOs to see changing shape of the global economy. In May 2006, he authored a visionary piece in Foreign Affairs about how these macroeconomic shifts would transform organizational business models across national borders, unifying operations, rebalancing decision-making, and changing the way business is done. What would result, he said, was the globally integrated enterprise. And it did. Sam is a visionary. You can see this from some of the investments his company has made in Egypt, like a global delivery center, a business process delivery center, in addition to its broad and ongoing commitment to the country's dynamic economy and society. Under Sam's leadership, IBM also worked to mold a new leadership model for its own employees, and last November, the company was rated #1 by Fortune magazine as the top global business attracting, retaining, and nurturing leadership talent. It is so appropriate for us here. Woo! Yay, Sam! And I also have to tell you that I learned this evening, Sam is a great athlete and a great golfer. He's about a 9 handicap, so I really like him now. Thank you, Sam.
Good call. Thank you, Kathy. You were wonderful to do that. Mr. Ambassador, also, thank you very much for hosting us this evening. Actually, it's quite special for me if you think about why we're all here, and it's quite honestly not to talk about IBM, but to talk about one of my good friends and colleagues, Chris Kane, that I wasn't persuasive enough to convince to stay longer at IBM. So I persuaded lots of people to do lots of things, but I wasn't that good. So anyway, but I thought that it's really appropriate that we're having this recognition tonight in the embassy because Chris led a lot of our investments in Egypt. We've been in Egypt now for 54 years. I find it fascinating when I talk to my colleagues in business who talk about emerging countries and emerging opportunities, and they talk about like Brazil and India and Russia and Egypt and South Africa. And I say, yeah, we've been in some of them 95 years. And it's like some of those countries I've been in and out of longer than you've been around as a company. You know, so China, India, you know, we've been thrown out of all and we're now back, you know. Cyclical things, you know. We call it regime change in the corporate sense, but over some minor issues that we've all been involved in. But fundamentally, it's absolutely incredible. And Chris really was a strong advocate of us making aggressive investments in Egypt. Kathy's gone through what a lot of those are. But in addition to that, you wouldn't think of Egypt and Cairo as having one of the most advanced nanotechnology centers in the world. And we do. And the government's been wonderful in working with us. We're doing all sorts of things there as it applies to healthcare, as it applies to desalination of water and the like. And so it's very, very advanced, and our research scientists are working with the universities and and building out those skills and capabilities. So it's been great, and it's been a wonderful investment. But I was thinking back, and Kathy, to your introduction. This is a little bit off script to my colleagues. I'm sure they're surprised to see this. Look, I had to do an investor meeting yesterday. It was sold out, 600 people, all wanting to know me very, very well. And I stuck to the script at the Lawyers Road and Maria Road. So I don't have to do that tonight, right? I don't have to stick to the script. There's no security regulations that I'm worried about this evening. But this is a forward-looking statement. No, but the point that I thought I'd make about this idea of a globally integrated enterprise, we were sort of sitting around one day and had come to the conclusion, and this was probably after the dot-com bubble blew up, so 2001, 2002, and we had this belief, some of us had this belief, that regardless of the form of government, that fundamentally there'd be many more countries now engaging in the global economy, and that there would be this desire to advance their societies in a way, build up the middle class, create university systems, fix healthcare and water, and all the things you do when you enter into the global economy, and there would be a tremendous opportunity for IBM. One is to hire great people, like we have 1,000 people now in Egypt. But in addition to hiring really smart people, it would also be a great business opportunity. And we had this idea that would seem so simple at that point in time. And you in Washington, I'm sure you'll find this quite novel. We thought that economics and improving societies, education and quality of life was not political. Now, that was a very naive thought, I understand. We viewed it as sort of the thing we should do here and everywhere else in the world, to participate in those societies, to help them advance whatever the agendas happen to be, and that would not be a political problem. Because after all, you're creating work, you're creating higher education for the people, you're fixing healthcare systems, you're fixing their banking systems and making things more transparent. How could this ever be a political thing? Well, as you know better than I, because I only grew up near here. I'm from Baltimore. I never grew up here. And I mean, Baltimore might as well be another universe compared to Washington. I mean, it's quite different, nonetheless. But there is some continuity because the D'Alessandros and Speaker are, as you know, all the same family. So there's continuity from Baltimore to Washington. But so in this concept, this idea of what we could do to participate as these, regardless of the form of government they happen to be, as these folks began to engage, that it would be good for trade, it would be good for everything, it would be uplifting, and this is great. We needed Chris. This is the punchline of the story. Because as you know here, nothing is that simple as you go around the world. Because we say, well, let's pick a country, a small country, let's scale it from, say, 3,000 people to 50,000 people. Go hire 1,000 a week for 2 years. That was one of these ideas we had. We actually did it. But then you get in all sorts of things. You get all kinds of reactions, and you get all kinds of positives and negatives and forces in physics, right? And so what Chris was able to do was incredible. He was able to keep everybody settled and happy, convinced that all parties would be better off for the fact that because ultimately it really isn't, economics isn't political. It really isn't at the end of the day, and that we ought to be able to operate and get our people trained, or our businesses licenses, and the U.S. would support our endeavors and the like, and we shouldn't have a counter-reaction to it, etc., etc. And he did a wonderful job. He sort of became our ambassador around the world. He really did. And we traveled all over the place together. We did, and we'd be in a lot of these meetings everywhere. I'll leave out some of the countries because you'll figure out who the leaders were. And I'd always say to him before some of these meetings that were sort of terrifying in places where they weren't exactly a free, open, democratic society. And I'd say, now what am I going to say? And he'd look at me and go, well, try that. And it worked. It was sort of like, wow, it actually worked. It was pretty incredible. He had great advice for all of the IBM colleagues, because he had this wonderful perspective that if we could, which we have now done, but if we could actually participate and contribute in all these various countries and all these societies and the like, and bring them together, that we all would be better off. and he was sincere about it, and it wasn't just in our own self-serving interest. And yes, business has been good, by the way, but just put that aside. He had 3 record years in a row, so it's not too bad in a recession. But nonetheless, he did a wonderful job. So Chris, as a friend and a colleague, as a wonderful parent, you are deserving of this great recognition, this award, so congratulations.